Welcome to Life Picks Relationships, helping you understand and enliven your marriage through the various perspectives and experiences of others who found a way to prioritize what's really important in life. From new love to those that have weathered the storms, let's get ready to take your relationships to the next level with your host, ST.
Hey, Life Picksers, hope you're having an awesome day. Are you ready to better understand yourself, your partner, and your marriage? You will in this episode. We're on our way for hitting 1 million downloads by the end of 2025. Can you share this episode, if you like it, with your family and friends so they too can have an extraordinary relationship? I am super excited today to be speaking with the founder and president of MANNA Educational Services International. He's also an author of over a dozen books on leadership, culture, education, and faith. You can find out more about him at rickchromey.com. Thank you so much, Rick, for being here. I am excited to be speaking with you. You want to start by telling us about something that you did as a kid that your parents still speak about to this day.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. First of all, I grew up with my grandparents more than my parents, and they probably don't talk to, both of them have passed away now, so it would be an interesting question. But I think it would be my artistic side. I've always been kind of an artist, and I've written. I remember I just found the other day the first little book I wrote. It was about a bunny rabbit. I wrote it when I was 6 years old, illustrated it myself, sold it. I actually had money on it. I sold it for like 10 cents.
Are you serious?
Yeah. I was and I've always been that way. I remember even later, when I was in elementary school, we had these wildlife stamps. I grew up in Montana, and so we had wildlife stamps that my grandmother got, and I would research out these different animals, and I would put them on a stamp on a piece of paper, research it out, and then I would sell it. So I've been doing that all my life. So I think most people would find that interesting. I just found it as a way to make a dime.
Not especially interesting. It was interesting, but not so much. More for the money than for the entertainment of it.
Yeah.
Cool. I like that. Making money from little, the best ones here. Right? Not just like expecting everything themselves. I like that. Okay. So what are the 6 needs that you've put together of what you think are the 6 most important needs?
Right. Yes. Again, several years ago, as I was trying to help my students understand intrinsic motivation, and I was really becoming captivated by intrinsic motivation. Let me just put it this way. Part of what framed a lot of these inner needs, and what I'm going to explain as being the growls here momentarily, was I was starting to have a wholesale rejection of the incentive philosophy. And I was using it myself with my students. If you do this, I'll give you that. It never sneaked into my parenting because I figured it out long before I got into having kids. But it was one of those things where for me, I was constantly promising a gift or something, a gain. If you do this, I'm going to give you that. And it just would never last. They were temporary favors at best. And so it was just a problem. And I started studying intrinsic motivation, for people like Abraham Maslow, William Glasser, the power needs, as he called them. And in the end, I was trying to think of a way to kind of wrap all these up in a memorable way. And I guess I was really hungry on that day because actually I remember where I was at. I was at a St. Louis museum of it wasn't history, but it had a body exhibit, and they were talking about the Borborygmes, which is basically the technical name for the stomach growls. And that's where I got it. I was hungry, the stomach was growling, and I thought, I wonder if I could capture these 6 needs. So with that preface, I put together an acronym called the growls. And these are the inner needs that drive every human being. And we can chat about each one in a moment as you like, but it doesn't matter whether you're working with a relationship in the home with your children, works with your spouse. I mean, Linda and I, we constantly look to these needs, whether they're deficient or whether we need to scratch the itch, so to speak, of the need. But the first one is grace. The G in growls is grace, and it's kind of a spiritual word, and that's intentional. It's because I think deep down we have this spiritual need for an unconditional space. We desire a place where we can be us. We can be free. There are no conditions. There are no strings attached. It's a free relationship. And when you're talking about relationships, that's the best type of relationship. I'm in that right now with my wife, and we just celebrated 6 years together, and it's been totally a wonderful, unconditional type of relationship. I'd never experienced that. I was married for actually 30 years before that with another woman, and we were a good match and everything, but we just never had that sinking of the grace. And that's kind of where it was. So grace is unconditional. It's also surprise. I mean, you can.
Why are you putting surprise under grace?
Because for example, with incentives, you know what you're going to get. I'm going to give you a candy bar if you clean your room. Well, we know what that's going to be. We've tasted the candy bar. We go, oh yeah, I want that. Therefore, I'll clean my room to get the candy bar. Surprise is grace because, in fact, one of my favorite authors is C.S. Lewis, and he said that he was surprised by grace, surprised by joy, and that's part of that serendipity moment with grace is that it surprises us. We don't earn it. It just happens. We get a blessing. We get and when I talk with teachers and such, they always say, should I can the candy? Do you mean I get rid of the candy? No. You just don't make it the incentive. What you do is you say, hey, listen, we've had a great class today. I want to give you something that I think you're going to enjoy. Everybody gets a Snickers bar today. Here you go. You give it to everybody. Nobody earns it. It's just given because it's part of that grace moment. The R is relationship, and relationship really builds upon grace. But relationship is the idea that we need connection, we need collaboration, we need community. We need to have gathering spaces. And in this past year of COVID, I think we recognize that even more. We needed to have those type of places where we could really connect. The O is ownership. This speaks to our need for control. I mean, we're all control freaks at heart. We all want to be large and in charge, you might say. And so it speaks to contribution. It speaks to empowerment. It speaks to having choice. I mean, for many of us, it's just a matter of choice. And then the W is worth. Deep down, we want to feel like we matter, right? We want to feel like we have some value. And I think it goes beyond just innate value. I think it goes to your voice. It goes to your vision as well as how you see life. You want people to honor, how you're moving and how you're interacting and what you're contributing to the situation. I call those 4 needs the power needs, GROW, and that spells grow. And so when I'm working with employers and I'm talking about how do you grow your staff, how do you get everyone's talking today. I can't hire anybody. I can't find anybody who wants to
no one wants to work.
Yeah. Well, why? I mean, if you make work, nobody wants to do that. But if you make work play, I play at my work. So it's, but you meet those power needs of grace and relationship and ownership and worth. You feel like you're getting paid what you're worth. You feel like you have choice. It's not just always the boss's, way. It's I can have some contribution. You get a workplace like that, and people won't leave it. And not only that, but they're asking their friends to join them. So that's just significant. The last 2 are what I call the primitive needs, by the way, and that's the L and the S. The L is laughter. And I always say you can't spell fundamental without fun to start it out. And that's true. It's a fundamental primitive need. We all want to laugh. We all want to enjoy life. We all want to have pleasure in our life. We want to be in pleasing moments, pleasing situations. And that's why entertainment's not bad. It can be sometimes useless, but in a general sense, it's not a bad thing to be entertained. And the last one is, Maslow hit on this a lot, and so does Glasser, but just security needs. We need to feel secure. We need to feel that we have both not just physical security, but emotional security. So when I'm dealing with teachers and talking, if you're a teacher out there right now, your classroom needs to be a bully-free zone for this reason. It needs to be emotionally secure so that learning can happen. Because if it's not fun and it's not emotionally and physically safe, I mean, you're never going to get to the relationship, the ownership, and the worth and the grace, because they've got to have these first. So security and laughter, those are your primitive needs that kind of build that foundation.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's the growls.
So I like them. What made you come up with these specific 6 needs?
Well, again, a lot of them were based upon, Maslow, when I looked at Maslow and Glasser in particular, and there were others that were out there, but those are the 2 most significant influencers for me, is that I kept seeing, things like relationship popping. I kept seeing the need for connection, the need for choice. Glasser talks about choice. In fact, his entire theory is called choice theory for a reason. It's the idea that we're human beings. And let me just kind of categorically state this, because I think we get it wrong in the human condition so often, is that we're human beings, not human doings. And when we focus on the doing rather than the being, we get off on a lot of crazy stuff out there. And a lot of that's motivational things. Again, people say, well, with the incentives that, it works, right? I say, yeah, they always work. I don't deny the incentives work. They do work, but they create human doings. It's all about doing something to conform to what you want them to do, right? Yeah. Well,
yeah, they're not building them as a person. And yeah,
exactly. Yeah. It's about what would happen if we actually release people to be who they naturally are intended to be. We free them to have liberty in their, not just their choices, but liberty in their, in what their values, liberty in what they, this is part of the problem we have in our culture today, isn't it? We
Big time. And get so angry about this.
Nobody wants to talk about this, but I find it amazing. I've studied, I have a doctorate in leadership, and, I never really felt like I always thought I was a really smart guy, until I got my doctorate. And my doctorate basically ruined me on being smart, because when I graduated,
why I don't want to go to school. I got my doctorate. That's enough.
I got my doctorate and I felt so dumb afterwards, because what it did was it exposed me to seeing the world in such a fresh way that I went, wow, never looked at it that way. A bachelor's degree today is basically nothing more than a bit of indoctrination, really. It just tells you what you need to know to survive in life. Some would argue, and I think I would be in this camp, that basically a college degree is nothing more than a glorified high school diploma these days. It's really in your graduate work where you're taught more to think, and you're taught more to really become yourself and understand who you are. And that's
because from people that I know, and I haven't done the work that you've done, but from my experience of college and university, I found that it makes people think a certain way, a little bit of the opposite of what you're saying.
Yeah, actually they do. That's where I think the undergraduate work indoctrinates us to put us into a bubble. It puts us into a situation where we think within a box, and there's nothing wrong with that necessarily if that's where you want to stay. But the problem is for most of us, if you really truly are aware of your world around you, you recognize that everything's not black and white. I mean, there are different shades to things, and probably the thing that upsets, or I wouldn't say upsets, but more concerns me more than anything today, is how if you have a different opinion about something, that somehow you're a hater or you're a phobic.
You're canceled. That's it.
Yeah. It's like, and there's nothing worse than putting you in a box by people who say that they don't have any boxes, So
it's crazy. Yeah, if you don't agree, and no one could say anything anymore, because anything you're gonna say is gonna offend someone else, and that's it. We just can't talk. Finish. Yeah. Let's just shut everyone down.
Right. So for me, I'm kind of one of these obnoxious types in that way. I just, on Facebook, I just like to create conversations, and I will post stuff. People know what I believe. If you're a friend with me on Facebook, you know what I believe. But here's the thing: I honor everybody. I say thank you to everybody for. I don't have to agree with what you say. Now, I may challenge if someone posts something that kind of goes against the grain, maybe of history, or goes against the grain of of a fact, I'll challenge that. But at the same time, I think it's important that we honor and respect other people. That's part of recognizing their value, right? Every human being has value. And for me, I mean, a lot of that does come out of my own faith. I mean, I have a faith background, and I just really believe that when you're stamped in the image of God, that you have an innate value there, right? So that's a philosophical statement. I understand that some in your audience may not even agree with that. That's fine.
That's fine. Exactly. Safe space here, right? Like some people ask me before they come on the show, like, are there certain things I can say or shouldn't say? Or I'm like, you say what you want here. We want to hear all different opinions, hear everything, because there is no, I think, like you said, everyone has their value, and everyone deserves to be heard and deserves to be understood, and at a basic level, listen to without just getting shut down. Yeah.
Which is why I'm doing your show, as I felt safe to be able to come on here and talk with you about some of this stuff. It's fun.
Thank you. Right. Going back to the 6 needs, do some people have more, like a need for more of one of them versus the other, or not especially?
Actually, you've hit on something that is really a deeper part of the training that I do. When I share the needs in situations like this, it's, they're really enlightening. They definitely open up the mind and go, oh, okay, I can see where this works. But what I like to do when I deal with, an employer, with a teachers, a group of teachers or parents, depending on who I'm talking with, is I like to kind of get down to the nitty gritty of tearing these needs apart a little bit deeper. For example, in the community, in the relationship area, I built an entire workshop series called Sticky. It's how do we attract and how do we keep people? And so you think about an employer today trying to attract new customers. How do you keep those new customers? And we talk often in the employment or the business world about stickiness, and how do we create stickiness? And I think it comes back to these needs, and it's the ability for a place of business. Let's just use business in this case, to understand which need do you honor at what point. For example, if you're a brand new visitor, and I call these the rule of 3s, by the way, this is all freebie extra stuff now, right? But the rule of 3s is that in the first 3 minutes, people will decide whether or not they're going to come back to your store. They know within the first 3 minutes, and what they're looking for is a feeling. And they're of pleasure. I would add that there has to be something pleasing to that. There has to be, this is why those primitive needs need to speak. But there also has to be a secure place. I mean, if you walk into a store and it's chaos everywhere, and you feel
I'll walk right out.
No, I don't even know where the bathroom's at, and there's no signage. It's just a disaster. I've been to some yard sales like that. I'm in, I'm out. But a yard sale that's nicely ordered, nicely structured. You walk in, I'll spend 3 minutes there, which brings me to the next need. In the first 3 visits, so you got to figure someone comes back, and in the first 3 visits, it moves to relationship. Can you grow that relationship? Can people feel like there's a connection? Do they feel like, they fit a little bit in this scenario?
Not the first time?
Yeah, you can have some of that the first time. And remember, the first 3 minutes is where they have to feel secure as well as some pleasure. But yeah, you could actually start in the first 3 visits. That would include that first visit as well. Right. A relationship has to kind of develop. And that's where you got to be careful. You take a business. I think it's interesting. A lot of these businesses, what they want to do is shove an incentive down your throat. For example, you've been in this brand new place, and you go in there and you pick a couple things up and go, oh yeah, I think I'll buy these. And you go up to the clerk and you start to check out, and they say, would you like our special? Are you a loyalty member, or do you have our credit card? And I used to think, what? Why are you asking me this? This is my first visit. Let me. I don't even know if I want to be back yet, but I say no. And the funny thing is my ex-wife used to work at Lowe's. And that's when I learned that I shouldn't say the name of the company, but that's okay. I'm sure it's not just Lowe's. It's other businesses that do this.
Any big business, probably.
The employees had incentives for selling these type of loyalty package. Mm-hmm. And so they got incentivized. So in other words, I'm helping you get an extra $100 in your paycheck. I don't know if I like that to begin with. That's not the reason I'm here. I'm your customer, not your paycheck. And, so that's
one of the big ways that people do business backwards.
Yeah. Well, we do education backwards. I mean, let's talk about education for a moment.
Please
you think
do.
about all the money, all the money we pour into education. You think about a student today, if they're going to get scholarships, if they're going to get any of that, it's all on the front end, right? So the further you go, the more the student has to pay more on their own. Whereas I've always suggested that a great college education or a school, what they ought to do is reverse that. I mean, a lot of students already come in with savings, or their parents have some savings, and they can usually muddle through the first year. But every year they come back, you give them more and more money as scholarship, so that by the time they reach their senior year, it's totally free, tuition free. Because you're the most valuable as a student in your senior year, not your freshman year.
That's very true. Now, why don't they do things backward? I'm not a fan of college, as you think. I respect anyone who does. I cannot understand how you could sit through all those classes, write all those papers, do all those things. I was not a school kid. But why don't colleges do that?
Well, because they think it's all about attracting the students, and they don't realize. In fact, that's the hidden, really the dirty little secret of universities and colleges. And I was a college professor in 3 different colleges full time, and so I can tell you that retention is the big problem in schools today. It's many of them can attract, but the problem is just keeping the students there. And that's when I came up with this idea of what we ought to do is instead of pouring all of our money to get them there, let's pour all of our money to keeping them there. That just seems more logical to me. But again, some of these things just aren't logical. And if you start thinking about it, by the way, I actually think you're kind of a smart gal, so you've learned a lot on your own, right?
On my own, I'm much more street smart versus school smart. I was fed up that at 16, I left school.
Okay.
I went to study in England instead for 2 years, where I did some of my BA, because they're in England. They finish high school at 16, where by us, we finished high school at 12, right? At 18. So when I went there at 16, I was the same age as everyone else in college. But that's it. I was over and done with it. Not for me. I prefer to learn from you talking like this. I get to learn how I want. I don't have to take a test afterwards. I don't have to follow rules. If I have a question, I could actually ask it. I don't know. To me, this is just way more fun.
Well, that's why you need to have a professor like myself. I love to create. Even in my classrooms, it was never a lecture; it was a conversation.
Same. You were my teacher, my professor, and which I don't know if it would be. I wouldn't get to professor level to my teacher in school even.
Yeah, I mean, well, and this is the problem with education is we teach the way we've been taught. And for 500 years, the lecture had been the whole thing. I come out of the church world, and so I can tell you, we do the same thing with church. A lot of people, they just want to have a conversation about faith. They don't have a problem with faith. They just want to talk about it. Let's chat about it. Instead, you go to church and you listen to somebody yak at you for 40 minutes. I mean,
yeah.
And then you get up and leave. It's like, whoa, that, of course, if you're Catholic, it'd be
and then
a
if
little
you say something bad about it, then everything else, you get in trouble. So
yeah. So I actually really like students I've always enjoyed the students that were more freewheeling, you might say, that wanted to learn on their own. Because a lot of people look at me and they go, well, you're a doctor. You obviously got good grades. And that's true. My best grades came when I was in my doctoral work. I really did. I was my best grades. My graduate grades were better than my undergraduate grades. But in high school, I was a C and D student. Okay. In fact, I had a teacher when I was in 2nd grade. I kid you not. She looked at me and she said, your last name starts with a C, and that's all you'll ever be. Are
you serious?
Yeah, I had a teacher say that to me, and it was, now fortunately,
she should not be a teacher. I'm sorry.
Well, just so you're aware, what's the backstory of this is I had a kindergarten teacher who put me on the path to success all the way along. This kindergarten teacher said to my mother, didn't say to me, because she may have said it to me, I don't remember, but she said it to my mom, and my mom kept repeating it over and over again. A parent-teacher conference. my kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Haruska. She was a German gal. I say gal because I thought she was like about 600 years old when I was in kindergarten, but she turned out she probably had to be in her 30s. She just passed away here just a couple of years ago. But I remember Mrs. Haruska, she had a lap. Her lap was so big that the entire kindergarten class, we could sit on it, and she would read to us. And it was just, I felt so secure in her class. But she told my mom, she said, Ricky, she called, and one of the few people that allowed to call me Ricky, by the way, but she said, Ricky's, there's something about it. He's creative and he's got a lot of energy and he's enthusiastic. And boy, I'll tell you what, I think he's going to do something great in life. I don't know what it is, but he's going to do something. You just tell him to keep focused. And so my mom would always say that. So when that teacher, just to be funny about it, when that teacher said, well, you're just going to be a C in life, I actually said to her, well, that's not what Mrs. Haruska said, and that's true.
I like her so much.
When my football coach, when I was in high school, I played football and I had such a chip on my shoulder. Oh, I was one of those kids that was angry and mean. And, I came out, my life story has a lot of hurt in it. And I won't go into all that, but, I had a lot of hurt in my life. And so by the time I got to high school football, I just wanted to hit somebody. And I was 5'4". And the coach said, where do you want to play? And I said, I want to play defensive line. He said, you're 5'4". Nobody plays defensive line. I said, that's not what Mrs. Haruska says.
Oh, wow. Really? In you. Okay.
I literally started in high school football as a nose guard. And by the time I graduated, I was playing defensive end. In fact, I have the distinction. I understand. I don't know if this is still true, but at least 10 years ago, it was true that I was the smallest defensive end in the history of Montana football. And, I'm kind of like the Rudy Rudiker of Montana.
Whoa, I like that. Okay, that teacher is a teacher that should be those are the type of people that we want as teachers. And I'm sure it went over into you, and as you teaching in a classroom, I'm sure it was like that also. So at least that was good. That after you, my heart literally went down when you said that you'll only be a C. I'm like, no, so good for that story.
Well, if C stands for creative and collaborative and
courageous. Yeah. Okay. So back to what we were saying, of which needs people need more. So there's in the first 3 minutes, you have the secure and the pleasure part. And then the first 3 visits is a sort of relationship. After that, it's just all of them, or is it?
It moves into ownership. The first 3 months, you start to feel like you have to create a situation where you move beyond relationship to where you can contribute. You feel like this is a place where I'm actually able to do something, and my skills and who I am matter here, and all that. Also, affirmation is part of that whole picture too. But the bottom line is when you get to the very end, I look at, again, in the church world where I do a little bit of work, actually quite a bit of work. The average church person hangs with a church for about 3 years. That's a very interesting statistic to me because, if they go, that means they spend 3 years of their life in a church and then they move to a different church and start all over again with the process. And what's going on, and what I think about is that within the first 3 years, the last need is not being met. The last need is I've got to feel like I can actually lead. I can be empowered to have control here. And in the church world, there's a very limited amount of control. That's why a lot of us get frustrated with church. But it's not just church; it can be anything. But you think education for a moment. I'll show you how these needs work. I could literally tell you as a college professor which students were going to be only there which freshman students, brand new students, were only going to be there for a semester. And that was because, we had the typical, I was in a very small school, which allowed me to go down and eat lunch with the students. And we had a cafeteria. Wow. Okay. And I would sit in the cafeteria and I literally would point them out. I said, Joe or Jane over there, they're not going to make it because they're sitting by themselves day after day after day. They were not connecting. Now, maybe they enjoyed a little bit of what they were experiencing, but for the most part, they weren't developing friendships. And I was probably 90% accurate in that assessment, and that prediction. So one of the things that I started to do in my own program, I couldn't obviously operate with other programs, but my own program is we would have a retreat with my students within the first 2 weeks. We
right
would go,
away.
yeah, and I'd actually build it into their fees. We call it the retreat fee. But every year, my programs, and I had about 100 students in my program, we would go to a weekend getaway, and we would just get to know each other and build relationships. And
You should have been my professor.
Our retention rate was 100%. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, how do these 6 needs translate into a marriage? Because these are things that you constantly have to have on a consistent basis.
Right. Well, again, obviously, we have to have a lot of grace with our spouse to begin with.
Yeah.
We got to go, okay, I forgive you again. I forgive you again. It's one of my favorite statements by Jesus was when on the cross, as he was being crucified, he said, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. I've always thought that's a great statement, just a life philosophy statement, because we're going to get hurt by a lot of people in life, right? There are people, maybe intentionally or unintentionally, they just they zing us. And I have learned that, hey, that's part of that grace. And in my relationship with Linda, that's what we do. We have a lot of grace with each other. I'll be honest, I can be a world-class idiot at times. I can really be a grumpy bear. I can wake up on the wrong side of the bed. I can wake up on the wrong side of the bed and get on the other side of the bed and wake up on that wrong side too. Yeah. I mean, I can really be bad. But to be fair to her, I mean, she has her moments too. And so we've learned grace is very important to that. Obviously, relationship. And this is where I have a different view of relationship. And some people, when they look at marriage, and I as a pastor, a lot of times I officiate a lot of weddings. And one of the things that I really try to get across in wedding counseling and in relationships is that we often have this Jerry Maguire idea that, oh, you compliment me, or you complete me is more the word. You complete me. Well, the reality is no relationship completes you. I mean, if a relationship completes you, you're already psychologically got issues that we need to talk about here. A relationship can't do that. And by the way, stuff doesn't do that either. A lot of times we try to stuff ourselves full of things to fill up those voids in our life, but that doesn't do it. So what we do is we look for relationships to complement us, that make us better, that give us not just satisfaction, but also I call it the cream, the joy. And so with my wife, I'm constantly looking for that. I'm looking for ways to complement our relationship. She mentioned this was our anniversary week. We call it week because we celebrate all week long.
So much birthday. Fun. Congratulations.
Yeah. So I live in Boise, Idaho, where we have this place called the Anniversary Inn. And it's a themed room. Every room has a different theme. So there's like a presidential room and a Capitol room, and there's a Hollywood romance room, which is really cool. I got to tell you, with all these different rooms, we actually stayed in the Romeo and Juliet room on our anniversary. So one of the things that we do every year is we figure out what our room is going to be for next year. So that's what we did this year. And so we can just show up and we can enjoy that room. But we're already thinking about next year's room and it's cool. So we've created these little traditions. But out of that, on our wedding day, we wrote our vows out and we wrote it into a book. And I actually can see it. I just can't grab it right now. This book, and it's a beautiful leather-bound book. And she wrote her vows, I wrote my vows, and we read them to each other, and that was great. But then we decided that in all the special events, vacations, birthdays, different things like that, and especially anniversaries, is we're going to write to each other. We're going to journal out. So this becomes the story of our relationship, right?
I love that so much.
And so we got this growing, growing book full of memories. And I'm an artist, so I like to draw out a lot of our stuff, and that's fun too. But, like we took a trip, we did an anniversary trip where we ended up seeing my dad out in Minnesota. And we chronicled it the entire way up through, Utah, South Dakota, Wyoming, I'm getting the states all messed up, and then back through Montana. And now I look at that and go, I am so glad I did that, because it's the story of us. This is who we are, So building that relationship. Anyway, I'm getting to the point here. I know this great story and everything, but there actually is a point. Okay. The point is is I was reading the other day, my little book with Linda, and she wrote, one of the things that she really liked that I did was I gave her flowers. And I was going, when was the last time I actually gave my wife flowers? I literally could not remember.
You're like, I'm going tomorrow to buy.
Well, on our anniversary, because I read this on our anniversary morning, that day, she was at work, and I went down to the local store and grocery store, and I found the biggest bouquet of roses that I could find. And I filled up the love tank. Let's just put it that way. The old love tank was full.
Yeah. Okay. So that's grace and relationships.
Right.
Now for the ownership and worth, how do we, obviously you have the foundation of the laughter and the security that's there first, right? You can't build a relationship like that, but the ownership and the worth, how do we bring that into the marriage?
Well, I think a lot of that is by allowing choice. For Linda and I, when it comes to choice, we recognize that we're different individuals. We affirm that. So there's things that she wants to do, and I let her do it. I mean, there's this, she knows that I'm a flea market, thrift shop, pawn shop type of guy. And so she says, well, here's $20. Go enjoy yourself. I go, oh, you love me, don't you? And so that's I think choice is so important in a relationship, because what happens is usually one partner starts to control the other, and that's where you start to have your dysfunctions that emerge. It's not 50-50. It's not a 50-50 relationship. It's 100%, which is mathematically crazy, but that's where grace is all about. It's mathematically, you got to give 100%, and then you'll get 100% back. And, I love my ex-wife. We had a wonderful 30-year marriage together, and we have two wonderful kids from it, and we're friends. As it came out of it, but it did not work. The marriage did not work because these parts were broken. There was no grace in my previous relationship. The relationship itself was broken on many fronts, but there was no choice. I actually felt very limited in that relationship, and I don't feel that way now. So often, and as far as affirm, the same way, and she would say that I didn't affirm her, and that's a part of the problem with affirmation is it's very feely, it's very emotive, right? We tend to be more affirming when we feel like, wow, I love you, I just love you. So let me help you and your audience out a little bit with worth. Can I do that?
Sure.
Okay. Because what happened, and this is great for teachers too, but parents, let's talk about praise for a moment, because when you're talking about a marriage relationship, this all works. So I'm going to give you some help here. A lot of times what we do is we say, oh, I love you, right? Or I thank you for doing that. And I appreciate that. Well, all those are great statements, but they're non-substantive statements. There's no substance to them. I mean, what does love mean, right? There's so much. Yeah. I love pizza. I love pizza too, but I love pizza differently than I love Linda. So I've learned to use what I call substantive praise. And substantive praise means that you take. I'll give it a scenario. Linda and I in our relationship. I'm trying to think of something that she would do that would kind of wow me for a moment, because there's so many things that she does. They're just so common. And I'm not great. I should be more grateful for her. I'm just being honest. I should just go, wow, I'm so appreciative of that. But I'm trying to think of something bigger. Okay. She makes me this amazing meal. That's my favorite meal. I'm not expecting it. She just makes it, and it's really good. Like last night, she made this macaroni and cheese that was amazing. So substantive praise would be this. It wouldn't be go, wow, this macaroni is great. Thank you very much. That's a start. But what you do is you take it and you add a feeling to it. You say, this is really good macaroni and cheese, honey. I mean, I'm really thankful that you took the time today to do this. That makes me feel really good. It makes me feel like you love me. See, that's more substantive. And that's helpful. Now, if you can take it to a different level, and with teachers, I often say you want to take it to the level of the future. You talk about how it makes you feel. Like, for example, let's move to education. Little Johnny here picks up after, he's done learning for the day. He picks up his stuff on his desk and throws away some trash. You can say, "Thank you, Johnny." Well, see, that's just praise, right? But if you say, "Thank you, Johnny, I appreciate the fact that you're helping me out," that makes me feel really good, because right now I've just really got a lot of things on my plate. So thank you for doing that. You're really a good helper. See, that's more substantive. But
my question on that is, does that make the child feel now they're obligated? Not so much obligated, but they're doing it more for you versus for themselves?
Well, they may feel that, but my next point is you take it to the next level. You say, you actually build a vision. See, the problem with education today is we don't give visions to our students anymore. So what's
the ideal compliment? Let's hear that praise.
Well, like with Johnny picking up the trash or something like that, I might say something, Johnny, I tell you what, you've really got a heart to serve people, don't you?
Yeah, I like much better, because it's building him the vision. It's for the future. It's not when you're not there, he's going to go and want to do it also. Yeah.
I could see you someday. I don't know. Maybe you would be a teacher like I am. You could possibly be a teacher like I am, building a vision in their heart. And it could be different. It just really depends. It's just different. I also, I don't know how familiar you are with the love languages.
Yeah, there's a book, of course, talk a lot about it here. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a gifts guy, and Linda is a time person. I mean, her language of love is time. So for me, I just need to sit down and spend time with her. She's also very much into affirmation. That's part of her love language. So learning that is key, but I'm a gifts guy. And she's had a little bit of harder time with me because, her gifts to me are, they're just interesting, like she knows
her types of gifts, not your types of gifts.
Yeah. And that's often what happens is, see, I'm a gift giver. So I listen to what you're talking about. I'm thinking, I'm at a yard sale and I see something. I think I buy stuff for other people at yard sales because I go, this would be a great gift. And it is. I love to see them light up when they get the gift. But with Linda, and God bless her heart, I mean, it's just not. It's probably low
one
on
of her weaker points. Yeah. That's her weak point. Then you're good.
Yeah. But I love her through it. But we've had some good laughs over it. I mean, she knows I'm a huge Minnesota Viking fan, and one Christmas she bought me a jersey. She wanted, because I always said I'd like to have a nice jersey, and she went out and she got me a Minnesota Viking jersey, but she found it fairly, let's just use the word affordable, not cheap here. Okay. It was affordable. And when I opened it up, see, as a Viking fan, I'm expecting one of my favorite players' numbers and name to be on the back. And I'm going, yes. Okay. So I'm opening this up and I don't recognize the number. And then when I turn it over, I realize it's a quarterback that had played for the Vikings like for 1 year and then was gone. He's not even in the NFL anymore. It's just like, and I'm going, I can't wear this. Nobody's going to even know who this guy is, but I put it on and I said, oh, this is wonderful. Thank you very much. And, but eventually I had to have that conversation going because my son, who knew that my favorite player at the time was Adrian Peterson for the Vikings. He bought me a Vikings jersey with Adrian Peterson the very next year. So one day she asked me, why do you always wear Peterson's jersey and not mine? And I said, do you want to know the truth? I mean, it's kind of like that moment from A Few Good Men. You want the truth? You can't handle the truth type of moment. But, she took
it.
To her credit, she took it. And that's where she had some grace.
So you guys are awesome. Wow. Okay. So before we get to our final question, where could life picksers connect with you and learn more about what you do?
Well, I always point people towards my website, rickchromey.com. That's probably the easiest place to look me up. But you can also find me as well at Facebook. I do a lot at Facebook and with just Rick Chromey. And I have if you're familiar, if you're interested in my religious arm and my faith area, mannasolutions.org is a good place for that. So I do a lot of work helping churches understand the growls as well. But for me, it's just about creating a better world. I just really want to leave the world a better place than it is and create the conversations and, connect people. I love connecting people. In fact, I've enjoyed getting connected with you today. This has been fun.
Oh, yes, it was. Okay. I think you're going to like our last question.
Okay.
How would you describe an extraordinary relationship without using love, connection, or trust?
An extraordinary relationship without love, connection, or trust. That is an interesting question. I think I'd come back to grace. I think grace would be that, that's what makes it extraordinary. For me, we talk about natural and then we talk about supernatural. To me, supernatural is the grace because, when I train on this and help people try to understand it, we all know grace when we experience it, right?
Yeah.
When we experience grace, we go, I love the grace I got. We feel that grace, we know, but it's a lot harder to kind of maneuver and create an environment of grace. It's easy to create an environment of relationship, connection. We know how to get people together and talking and doing that. We do a pretty good job at empowering people, or hopefully we can do that, and affirming people and even making it fun or secure. The other needs are very tangible needs. They're very objective. You can kind of wrap your mind around it and go, okay, I can create 10 things I can do to create an environment of relationships. Got it? But how do you do that with grace? With grace, it's messy. It doesn't make sense at times. It's murky. It's counterintuitive. It goes outside the box. U2 is one of my favorite bands, and they have a song called Grace. And it's on, I can see the album, but I can't say it right now. But they have a song called Grace, and one of the lyrics says, "Grace travels outside of karma." And I love that line because most of us, we do things because it's very karmic, We do it because, if I let you in drive, if I let somebody in drive and my karma is good karma, maybe I'll have the same moment, it'll come back to me. Grace travels outside of that. Yeah. I don't want to say it. Because for me, I do a lot of just stuff for people just because it's good to do. I was thinking of something I did yesterday for a neighbor, a new neighbor that's moving in. They're not even here yet, but I just saw something that needed to be done at their house, their new house that they bought. And I knew that it was mowing the lawn, just to be honest. It was mowing the lawn. I just don't want to draw attention to myself in this case. It was just being a good neighbor. And I was thinking, as I was mowing my lawn and I saw their lawn really getting deep over there because the other owners had moved out a few weeks ago. If I was in their shoes, I wouldn't want to come to a backyard. I was already mowing their front yard, by the way, but I wouldn't want to come to a backyard that's knee deep in grass. And so I just mowed their lawn for them. And, it wasn't because, I felt like there was going to be some karmic moment where someone was going to do it for me. Right. I did it because I just love people and I love life and I love God. And it's just part of who I am.
Yeah, I think a big part of grace is coming from that loving place, that it's just pure, that grace. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rick. This was so much fun. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing with us your value, your wisdom, and your perspectives.
Well, thank you.
That's all for this episode of Life Picks Relationships, and we have a huge favor to ask of you that will not only support this show, but also give others what they need to take their marriage to the next level. We're striving to have 1 million downloads per episode by December 31st, 2025, so please share it with your family and friends so they can turn their relationship into an extraordinary one.